Oh, hey, it's good to see you again. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of See It Again Cinema. Today's episode is on Donnie Darko, a film that I have not seen in over 20 years. This guy introduced me to it. This is my childhood friend, Alan.
Hello.
Yeah, so it was the summer after sophomore year of college. We were both back in our hometowns, living with our parents for the last time, and we went to the local Blockbuster, and you recommended Donnie Darko, a movie you had already seen. I knew nothing about going into it. You just told me it was weird, and you thought I would like it.
That's about the size of it.
Yeah. What do you remember about it the first time you saw it?
The first time I saw it, I didn't understand it, but I really liked the aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
I was angsty, and it seemed like the protagonist was also angsty. And also there was a bunch of weird stuff, and I like weird stuff.
I think anyone who's seen this movie will attest that it is weird, but enjoyable. Not just weird
Loved
for
it.
just weird for weirdness' sake. It feels like there's a purpose behind the weirdness.
Absolutely.
Like to communicate some deeper truth about angstiness. Yeah. Why are we rewatching this film now?
In the internet age, there has been a lot of information or interpretations and analysis of the movie that I was never really aware of. And after I saw that, I decided that it might be worth going back and watching it again. See what the movie actually was about.
Yeah, a lot of people consider this to be the director Richard Kelly's best film. I haven't seen a lot of what he's done since, so I can't comment on that. Although I got the impression that it really irked him that so many people didn't understand what he was trying to say with the first movie, to where his director's cut tried to correct for that. It's been over 20 years since you've seen this film, and it's been about that long for me. What do you most remember from those initial viewings?
The Tears for Fears song, Mad World.
Yeah.
That was the first time I'd heard that tune, and that was just amazing. That was kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah, and it's a cover of the song.
It's a cover by Gary Jules.
Yes.
Is that correct?
And I think that that's probably his most successful song.
Yeah. And then, of course, the iconic scene where you see the rabbit for the first time, Frank.
This was the first film I ever saw Maggie and Jake Gyllenhaal in, and I thought it was great that they cast actual siblings to play siblings.
It worked well.
It added a verisimilitude. That was great.
I also really was not afraid of clowns growing up, but this movie made me afraid of rabbits.
Oh, you and Jordan Peele are both afraid of rabbits. I wonder what Jordan Peele thought of Donnie Darko. If I ever get a chance to meet him or have him on the show, I'd like to ask Jordan Peele about how he feels about Frank. Are there any other topics or things you'd like to discuss about this film?
Well, I'm going to try to figure out all the wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff. It's been explained to me. I've watched the YouTube analyses. And I'm going to try to figure it out for myself. Because apparently the director claims that like you said, most people didn't understand it.
Yeah. But
I don't know if it was meant to be understood. Maybe it was.
It's got to be tricky when you think that you're making something that you've been clear, and then you find out that you weren't clear. But I also don't think that art that is the most clear and direct is necessarily the best art.
You know, I do remember in the director's commentary in the DVD that he did say we intentionally left it open to interpretation. And then, I think maybe he went back on that a little later.
Yeah, then he realized maybe you can leave yourself too open to interpretation. Yeah. Well, all right. It's time to begin and watch Donnie Darko again. We'll catch after the credits roll. See it again, see it again. Cinema, see it again, see it again. Cinema, see see it again, see it again. Cinema, see it again, see it again. And then talk about it. And we're back. Okay, Al. So, it's been over 20 years since we've seen this film. What'd you think of Donnie Darko the second time?
Just as great. Understood it less this time.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
I misunderstood it even harder.
Okay.
Yeah.
What did you misunderstand?
I still have no idea what happened in that movie. There was some cool stuff. There was a freaky rabbit.
Yeah.
And some wormholes.
And
some great 80s music.
We don't need to get into the intricacies of the plot. We really don't. But was there anything that seemed new to you this time around? Because when the movie started, I was like, oh yeah, the movie does start with him like waking up on a highway road with his bike, and then it says Donnie Darko. I didn't remember the actual beginning of the film. You know, some movies like Y Tu Mama Tambien, it's kind of like Betty Blue. It starts with people like you remember the beginning of those movies.
Yeah, for sure.
You don't forget that that's how the movie starts. It's just the camera moving into the bedroom and you see the people doing it. But that's not going to get into the YouTube episode.
Well, I'll tell you. I was actually surprised how much of that movie I remembered. I remembered a lot of lines. I remembered a lot of scenes. The cocaine use in the hallway was very brazen. The kids with knives, seemingly just, there's a lot of violence in that school.
Yeah.
There was a lot of, aggressive teachers and...
also, ineffective teachers.
Ineffective teachers. Everybody was very quirky in that movie.
Even on the back of this, it says, described by its director as The Catcher in the Rye, as told by Philip K. Dick.
Okay.
I can see how Donnie Darko is a Holden Caulfield, kind of a troubled youth who fears and mistrusts every adult.
Mm.
And he goes to a private prep school, similar to Holden. What seemed new to me now is how almost every adult, except for his mom was the only one who seemed to love him unconditionally.
Yeah.
She was still powerless or wasn't quite sure how to help her son. But when he's like, what does it feel like to have a wacko for a son? And she says, it's wonderful.
Yeah. She's a good mom.
She is a good mom. Here's to Mrs. Darko. She's a good mom. As a former teacher of adolescence, I found that this film had a lot of examples of poor pedagogy, just bad classroom management, and
which ultimately was the theme of the movie. That was kind of the point of the movie, was to highlight, the state of education at the time.
In the 80s, in the early 2000s, in the 2020s. Recently, I've been watching The West Wing for the first time, which was a late 90s show about 90s era politics, and it's scary to me how relevant almost every debate that they're having is. Does anything actually ever change, or are we always just dealing with the same trauma, tragedy, comedy, and bullshit?
Kind of seems that way.
Teenagers today will relate to Holden. They'll relate to Donnie.
Seth Rogen should have pursued a career as a villain. He was very convincing as a bully.
He really was. I did not know who he was the first time I saw this. I didn't watch Freaks and Geeks when it was initially on. I've since found it to be a phenomenal show. But I think we should take a moment just to recognize how amazing this cast is for this directorial debut. You've got Patrick Swayze, Mary McDonnell, the debut of the Gyllenhaals, or at least this was, I think, most people's exposure to Maggie and Jake. Seth Rogen in a very small but meaningful
Drew
part.
Barrymore.
Drew Barrymore? When we were watching the film, we were talking about the bicycle scene being so emblematic or alluding to other 80s touchstone films like E.T. She was in E.T. It's just remarkable how good everyone is in their parts. But the best actor in the movie is Sparkle Motion sponsor. I don't know who that woman is, but she really...
Yeah, I have to find out her name.
Catherine Ross, I think is her name.
James Duval was Frank. Patrick Swayze. Beth Grant.
Ah, Beth Grant. Who was Catherine Ross? The psychologist, the therapist, Catherine Ross from The Graduate. She plays Elaine. Elaine.
All right. I've never seen The Graduate.
Oh, The Graduate's fucking great, dude.
That guy's in that movie.
Huh?
That guy's in that movie.
No, Catherine Ross.
Yeah. She's also in it.
And, I mean, Catherine Ross. I was wondering why she looks so familiar. The Graduate is about a maladjusted young boy who isn't quite fitting into society and feels that the world of adults is full of phonies and he doesn't want to be an adult, but he's graduated college and now he has to figure out what he has to do with his life. Jake Gyllenhaal is playing a Benjamin Braddock, Donnie Darko, Benjamin Braddock. They sound like superhero names because they're alliterative. The whole reason Stan Lee ever used alliterative names like Peter Parker, Bruce Banner, Reed Richards is when he was typing his scripts really fast, it was just always easier to just abbreviate RR, PP, BB. So Stan Lee, he didn't want to have to remember like SB, FK, RT. So he said Reed Richards, RR, BB. And Benjamin Braddock, Donnie Darko. They got Catherine Ross, who is the young love interest in The Graduate.
Mm-hmm.
She's essentially a Jenna Malone character, except that she's the daughter of their rich neighbor.
Okay.
It's a weird appropriation of a lot of the themes and plots of The Graduate. You guys see The Graduate, but...
You need to write an essay.
I know. How do you feel this film holds up?
For me, it held up. The most effective moment is when Donnie Darko is hypnotized, but this is towards the end of the movie, where he stands up and he walks around and he's talking to his therapist, and he turns around and he says, "I can see him right now."
Yeah.
And then it flashes to Frank.
It's terrifying.
Goosebumps.
Yeah.
Like for 10 seconds there, it was fantastic.
One of my favorite effects is when the camera tilts up and you see the chandelier, but then when it tilts back down, he's already moved out of the door. It makes you think you are, from his point of view, looking up at the chandelier. It's like they just wanted you to really think about that chandelier and know it was there so that later on when his sister gets home after her night of partying and the chandelier shakes, it has extra resonance. As someone who's made a number of debuts in his life, like first short story, first EP, first full-length album, I'm always impressed by a debut where I'm just like, so much of this really works. Like,
yeah, he nailed it.
And he apparently thinks he had to make a director's cut. And I'm curious.
This is a bad idea.
This will be our call to action. So what about you? Do you prefer the theatrical cut or the director's cut or no cut? Have you made your own cut? If so, let us know in the comments below.
Oh, yes.
Follow me.
The one thing I wanted to say, speaking of things holding up,
yeah,
I have yet to hear better sound design for a creepy voice. The voice that I'm presuming it's Frank's voice, or whatever this interdimensional being is. I've never heard a more punchy, more creepy, more perfectly crafted, out of this world sort of supernatural voice. It always creeps me out when I hear it.
And yet it also is convincingly persuasive in how it beckons him, as just like in Alice in Wonderland, the idea of follow the white rabbit. So we're following the rabbit, and that there's this voice that takes us down a wormhole. I mean, a rabbit hole. But based on this particular film, are there other movies that you would recommend to someone if they like Donnie Darko? It's like, oh, well, you gotta check out this.
I'm gonna have to think about that for a minute. I think Donnie Darko was kind of unique in that it's just. I mean, the director might be disappointed to hear me say this, but for me, the movie was just artistic. I didn't. If he was trying to make a point about time travel and whatnot, it didn't land with me. But like artistically, I appreciated every element. I appreciated the cinematography, sound design, soundtrack, the acting. I thought it was all great. Yeah, everything was great. Did you see the movie Primer?
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe if I had to pick something that made me feel similarly, Primer would be it. Although that was heavy on the time travel. I want more movies like that.
That feel like a personal, quirky vision
and
of
creepy.
a director.
It wasn't horror.
No.
There was not much horror imagery. There was Frank, and he was well utilized. They didn't overdo it.
It was almost like he was, instead of creeping death, he was creeping Frank. But they didn't ever have like a scene where Donnie is like a dream sequence where Frank is chasing him through the woods. It's just he's this presence.
He doesn't seem terribly bothered by him.
Yeah.
And he's kind of asking him questions, interacting with him. He doesn't seem afraid.
Yeah. Of all the movies we've ever seen, I think that there's something special about movies that maybe you see a long time ago and they stamp you with the experience, but you also remember who you watched them with. And so this film's always been special for me because it reminds me of that special time where I wasn't yet a college graduate, but I was an adult, but still kind of dependent on my parents and have these fond memories of watching it with you. So thanks for recommending this movie. Well, all right. That'll do it for this episode of See It Again Cinema, where old movies make magical new memories. Thanks for rewatching, and we'll see you next time. See it again, see it again. Cinema, see it again, see it again.
Eyes are dried out. I was making as dumb a face as I could possibly make.
I know, but it's okay.